The Stargate project was launched in 1990, according to the official version. Commissioned by the CIA and other related organizations, it was sent to study paranormal phenomena. In fact, work on it began in 1972. Now the Stargate project has been replaced by the Stargate project. Today you will learn all the secret materials of these projects that were ever found. Navajo necklace. As a rule, all documents of a closed project were actually handwritten reports of experiments with remote control, which were carried out using simple sketches and graphics. Remote viewing is the ability to use extrasensory perception to see or sense a distant person or place. In fact, large portions of the records did not actually have any clear and defined criteria for description. In general, these could be simple notes without meaningful text. But they still clearly show what experimenters were doing in their time. About 20 people with clairvoyant abilities took part in this project. Periodically, they underwent various tasks, including the explosion of the Tunguska meteorite and the Rendlesham incident. However, the most interesting experiment was with the Navajo necklace. To conduct it, test subject number 052 was selected, who received geographic coordinates and approximate descriptions of the thing itself. For what? They wanted to get a detailed description from the subject of a silver necklace that was located at a specific distance from her. The clairvoyant plunged into her consciousness and gave a detailed description of the difficult scene that she saw. Some unfamiliar architectural structures, incomprehensible civilizations, and also a master who was making an incredibly beautiful steel chain with one left hand appeared before her eyes. Man on Titan. A new experiment was carried out in the fall of 1986. Then the subject had to see Saturn's moon, Titan, and describe the base on its surface. When she secretly entered the base in her mind, she saw several operators in human form. Moreover, these were two guys who were sitting at the control panel, and all their actions were controlled by a young, pretty female person. If you study the document in this experiment in more detail, it provides an example of 2 more sessions. This time concerning our planet. As it turned out, the woman was also sent to Mount Hayes, Alaska. According to test subject number 052, there she met 2 creatures, near some kind of structure, inside of which sat a technician working on a strange machine. But the most amazing thing in her story was that this man noticed her through the projection, and even offered to look at his creation. After this experiment, the clairvoyant plunged into another scene, but no less strange. It was somewhere in the southern hemisphere, and there she had to meet a pale humanoid who very much resembled a robot. And, by the way, he also knew about her presence. According to the subject herself. Parapsychology in the USSR. After the Second World War ended, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America kept a close eye on its Russian colleagues. Therefore, you shouldn't even be surprised where the document on parapsychology in the USSR ended up in the archives of the Stargate project. By the way, it has a very large volume, 12,000 pages. The document stated that before the start of the Industrial Revolution, Russian researchers had advanced further in their studies than anyone else. However, after the October Revolution of 1917, the situation changed. Despite the fact that Russian institutes published many research papers on this topic over the 6 years from 1922 to 1928, the USSR's paranormal research program began to operate at full capacity only after an alleged telepathic attack from the American nuclear submarine Nautilus. Of course, the Central Intelligence Agency was filled with envy at the success of its Russian counterparts. Report on the Grill Flame Project. This project is the first work in the overall research of the Stargate project. In fact, it was started to achieve just one goal: to study the possibility of psychotechnologies for military purposes. If we rely on official sources, then these studies were carried out on the instructions of the Command of the Ground Forces and the Intelligence and Security Command of the U.S. Army. However, when the Stargate documents became available to the general public, it became clear that the Grill Flame project was primarily launched by the Central Intelligence Agency. Perhaps the most sought-after test subject for the Central Intelligence Agency at the time was Army officer Joe McManiello. It was this person who took part in a huge number of different experiments that were related to remote control. When the Grill Flame project ended, it was in the fall of 1983, experts compiled a final report. It put forward recommendations for the study of a wide range of psychophenomena, in connection with the potential for their tactical use. Experiments by Uri Geller. You'll probably be hard-pressed to find a psychic with such amazing abilities and YouTube popularity as Uri Geller. Of course, this man tells everyone that he performs his tricks exclusively with the help of his consciousness. But virtually all of his supernatural feats can be repeated using various stage techniques. Although now let's still believe Geller's story. After all, he uses his abilities not only to make a profit. Uri Geller often assists various corporations in resource exploration for free. Declassified Stargate data revealed that the CIA was interested in the psychic back in the 1970s. The experiment was even the subject of study at Stanford University. Today there are people who are absolutely sure that it was Geller who at one time was the leader of massive psychological warfare operations. This is, of course, all speculation. But if the operation is based on the Stargate reports, it becomes absolutely clear that one of the subjects, on a tip from the CIA, went to look at Uri Geller in the fall of 1990. Experiment with Ingo Sauna. The CIA also studied other human psychophysiological abilities. For example, they were also interested in psychokinesis. They even found a psychic named Ingo Sauna who demonstrated similar skills. Let the field of psychokinesis not have such tactical value as remote injection. Still, she was also interesting to study. Here is one of the most memorable experiments. In the winter of 1976, the CIA placed Soane in one of the branches of the Maimonides Medical Center. They wanted to find out whether human consciousness, using psychokinesis, could influence the results of a random number generator. The reports clearly state that this experiment was successful. Extrasensory study of Jupiter. It is also interesting that Soane generally had special privileges when he collaborated with the CIA. So in 1973, he was given a special mission, together with his colleague Harold Sherman. He remotely explored the planet Jupiter. The experiment was very interesting, if only because both subjects were in different places, far from each other and had no connection at all. Soane was in a laboratory at Stanford University. Sherman is hundreds of kilometers away. But when their stories about Jupiter were analyzed, it turned out that Soane and Sherman, using remote tracking, told the same details of their journey. It is worth noting that in those years there were no close-up photographs of Jupiter, so the subjects simply could not know any details in advance. Each of them mentioned a large red spot and a huge dark cloud that follows it. Soane and Sherman said that the planet has many areas of shiny crystals that reflect sunlight and huge electrical storms on the planet's surface. Oklahoma City incident. I think many of you will remember the terrible story of the Oklahoma City terrorist attacks, which occurred in 1995. At that time, most people did not want to believe the official version of events. By the way, Tima Timokve and Terry Nichols caused incredible damage to the federal building in the city center, resulting in the death of 168 people. But now we'll talk about Jane Davis's book, called The Third Terrorist, which was published just in time for the 10th anniversary of the incident. In the book, the author clearly asks the question: two criminals who acted with Iran's blessing were indeed capable of orchestrating such an explosion after publication. Davis' work was even considered by Congress when they studied the case in more detail. And you know, someone will say that her theory is completely irrelevant. But on the other hand, it was largely confirmed by many documents from the Stargate project. What is known for certain is that the CIA had confidential information obtained by a psychic named Joe McManiello, which they did not even take seriously. It turns out that on April 20, 1995, Joe told them the details of the incident in Oklahoma City. The psychic told them that not two people were to blame for blowing up the building. There were 5 of them. Moreover, according to him, 3 of them were Arabs. What surprised the CIA representatives most? So this is what Joe McManigla was convinced, and supposedly a man named Carlo was involved in a terrible event. This information has been carefully checked. And as it turned out, none of the criminals was called Carlo, but the alleged Arabs, even more so, could not be called that. Despite all these denials, the first person to arrive at the scene was a doctor from a nearby hospital named Carl Spangler. Whether to believe in the psychic's story or not is up to each individual, but it cannot be denied that remote monitoring of subjects in Stargate really worked. Well, that's all for today. Don't forget to rate the video, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for your attention, and bye.